Hello, my name is David Cochran. I'm back with another video teaching authors how to sell more books. Today, I'm going to show you how to create your own ad images for free using completely free software as well. And I'm not a graphic designer. I have no artistic skill whatsoever. And you'll see me creating ad images live now in a moment using all free tools and free software with no preparation whatsoever, because I want to show you just how easy that can be. Now, just before I share my screen, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and tap that notification bell as well. Okay, let's go. Hello guys, I'm up here in the top right of your screen. Okay, so the first thing, before we dive into Canva and actually start building ad images, first thing I want to show you is this blog post. I'll put a link to it down in the description along with any other resources I mentioned in this video. But this post is very important because it'll give you links to a couple of tools that I'm sure I'll be using at some point during the ad image creation process. All these tools are free. I think there might be a couple of paid ones mentioned at the end, but all the main ones are free. Like Canva is free. That's the main tool I'll be using. It's really, really great. There is a paid version, which I do have as well, but I will restrict myself. I'll do my best to restrict myself to the free features because they're really, that is probably going to be good enough for 95% of people. You don't need to pay for it. But Canva is excellent. I love it a lot. And then there's also other tools here like this color scheme generator to help you match colors, which people like me need who are basically, I'm not actually colorblind, but I might as well be because I just can't match colors. But luckily the robot powering this website is perfect at it. And there's lots of other tools that you can explore there. I'll just put a link in the comments and you can look at it if that's of interest. Okay, so today I'm going to design an ad for Ernest Dempsey. He's an author friend of mine. And I think he sent over this book and the cover art as well. So I'm going to try and build an ad for that. And I can actually immediately see a couple of problems because Ernie has quite dark covers, which aren't necessarily a bad thing, especially in, the modern world of, white background social media and book retailer sites. They stand out quite a lot. But for me personally, I actually find that very difficult to design ads for any kind of dark or complicated covers like this. So this is going to be a bit of a design challenge, but let's see how it goes, because I think that will actually allow me to show you a couple of tricks in Canva that you might be aware of. So that's pretty good. Okay, so let's dive in. This is the homepage of Canva. And okay, let's move my noggin down here. Let me just show you where you create an ad. Okay, so it's this button over here on the right-hand side. You want this kind of subtle link here, custom size. Now you can, if you're designing something popular like, a Facebook ad, you can just type in Facebook ad here and it will actually give you the exact dimensions that you need. Although that's a little bit out of date, as we'll see towards the end of the video, because there's a new format for Facebook ad graphics, which I think performs a lot better. But we'll get into that later. First of all, we're just going to create a BookBub ad, and the size for that is 300 pixels by 250. And we just click Create New Design, and it'll open up a little perfectly shaped canvas for us. Now, I think I uploaded Ernie's covers already to save a bit of time. Yes, here we go. Because sometimes the upload and streaming process at the same time can cause problems, as I found out to my cost in a previous video. Okay, so this is Ernie's cover. He writes action adventure, men's adventure kind of stuff. So aiming at the kind of Dan Brown kind of audience, if you're not familiar with that kind of book. So what the bloody hell am I going to do here? Okay, so what I generally like doing with ad images is, firstly, I will always use the book cover. I know there's some people out there who don't like using book covers, but I honestly don't know what they're basing that on, because I've run huge ad campaigns in most major genres, and almost always the results, once you factor in things like conversion, the results are invariably better when you do use the book cover in some format. Okay, so what I would usually do then is I would get the designer to send over the cover art for whatever cover that I'm working from. And then I would use that as the background for whatever I'm doing. So this is going to be a bit tricky, but I think this template is going to work for us. Okay, so let's just move that into the background. Okay, so first thing you want to do is get your background in place. So we just shove the cover over here and it'll disappear handily. So we just want to fill the canvas because we don't want any of that white space in the background. So let's just pull that down a little bit further. Okay, so we might readjust that as we go, but that's a decent start. Already that's kind of an interesting kind of tableau, if you like. And then generally I would put the book cover somewhere like this, either a 2D or a 3D version. I'll show you how to make a 3D version in a minute, and we might need to actually. And then I would put a button somewhere around here saying free or 99 cents or whatever the deal is that I'm offering. And that's about it. It really is that simple. Now we're going to finesse this quite a lot to make it look a lot more pro. But let me just put the other elements in place so you know exactly what I'm talking about. So all I do is here, when I just want to make a button, I just go into the element side and I pick a shape. And usually I just start off with something square, and then I can just easily drag that. It's all drag and drop in Canva. It's very, very easy. Now with a button, bright red with white text is the thing that stands out most to the human eye when on the internet. So that's why you often see on websites, there'll often be a red button with white text. And if not, it might be a yellow button with black text or a black button with yellow text. And the reason why those color combinations are so effective is because they provide sharp contrast. And it's the bright colors that the human eye is attracted to anyway, but then the sharp contrast as well really makes it stand out. And I think, so let's just assume for a second it's free. It doesn't really matter. I would just put the price tag in the same place on this button if you like. Now, just in terms of text quickly, please don't use this font. I call it the Canva font. It's not a bad font actually, like it looks reasonably professional, but because it's the default font that everyone gets when they load up text, and because it's reasonably good, you see it absolutely everywhere. And I think there can be a kind of snow blindness to a design feature that starts appearing everywhere. That's why it's never a good idea to, just copy someone else's designs or whatever. I always think it's good to come up with your own fresh branding that really stands out. More people will click on it. Your ads will do better. And it's always just good putting in that extra effort. So don't use this Open Sans extra bold. Pick something else. I have a massive collection of fonts down here because like almost endless because I'm in the paid version. But even in the free version, sorry, these ones are ones I bought and uploaded myself. Again, I think you can only do that with the paid version. But I believe all these ones down here, here, are all free ones. And there's a massive selection you'll see there. They're all the free fonts that come with Canva. And I would just pick something relatively, not bland, but something that's not going to cause too much of a distraction and kind of blends in with what's on the cover already. Now, I'm anal enough that I would spend 20 minutes fussing and getting the right font, but this one looks okay. So we'll just leave it in for the moment and we'll get all the other elements of the ad in place. Now, this ad is actually nearly done, but it's got a couple of critical issues. Remember I was talking about contrast? You see the book cover here is basically blending into the background. And that's a big problem that I have with any kind of ornate cover or certain color palettes or anything that's dark. So you have two choices here, and this is a common problem. So I think it's really useful to highlight what to do here. You have two choices here. Either you can provide contrast as it is by, making the background brighter or increasing the saturation on the cover here itself, or by introducing a bit more kind of depth in the image by maybe using a 3D image here, or maybe doing both. So let's run through and see how they look. Okay, so I would click on the background here because you don't want to mess with the cover too much, right? Because the cover, if you have a good cover, and this is an excellent professionally designed cover that's good for the genre and has lots of like little genre signifiers there. You have the kind of, the jail, you have the religion, you have the kind of the sexiness of the red silk scarf. So you've a few things going that are going to visually hook readers of that genre. So you want the attention to be on the cover and on the offer, not so much on the background. You just want that to match, right? So at the moment, there's too much attention, I think, going on the background. So we need to reduce how much that's catching the eye. So what I would recommend doing is clicking on the background, then going up to filter here. And then you have all sorts of things that you can do just with one element of the image. You see, I've just clicked black and white there, and that's only affected the background. Or I could give some kind of hue to it. And there's all these sliders that you can play around with to get different kind of effects. What I think will work best here is just muting the background a little bit. So I usually just click around until I find something that does the job. So this is kind of just muted the colors a little bit in the background. You can also do this another way by just going into adjust here. So if you just, again, you can do this element by element instead of affecting the whole image, because I don't want to reduce the brightness of this red button. I don't really want to reduce the brightness of the cover, just the background. So you click on the background, and then here you can see you can blur it a little bit if you wanted to. You know, you can increase or decrease any of these effects. And blurring it a little bit it's an old trick from TV, right? From movies. You just blur the background a little bit and it makes whatever's in the foreground much more prominent and catch the eye. So that's one way you could do it. Another is with the brightness. So that provides a little bit of contrast, you know, when you have the background brighter than whatever's in the foreground, or the contrast itself. It will also do that. Or you can play with the saturation of the colors. For example, you could bump up the brightness and saturation of this cover here. The specifics don't particularly matter because they'll change from image to image. But what I recommend doing when you have this issue, which comes up maybe half the time, I'd say, when I'm designing ads, where the cover is blending too much into the background cover art. And I do recommend using, wherever possible, using the cover art in the background. I just find the ads do better. And then when they get to Amazon or wherever you're sending them, the conversion rate is much higher. I think, you know, they see the cover art in the ad on Facebook or BookBub, they click on it, they get to Amazon or Apple, they see the cover art again. There's nothing giving them pause. It builds up a lot of trust. It doesn't create any roadblocks between them clicking that buy button, which is what you like, what you want. If you don't use the book cover or don't use the cover art at all, and you have a different image, which might be captivating and might get clicks, and then they get to Amazon and they see different cover art, I think readers just pause. And I think that's why conversion drops, because that's what I always see. I always see dropping conversion when I use different images. You might get a lot of clicks. You might even get a higher CTR by not using the book cover. And that's why I think some people think it's a better approach. But I don't think they're looking at conversion, because when you factor that in, almost all of the time, ads perform much better using the cover art, using the book cover. It's not always possible, but where it is possible, I recommend doing it. Okay, so go into your background, play around with the different things here. Either with the background, I usually try the background first and not messing with the book cover too much. So something like that, either like using this kind of Nordic filter here, which you can turn up more. I wouldn't go too far with it because you don't want it to blend, you just become like a muddled mess. But something like that, I think makes the front stand out a bit more, you know. It's still not perfect. So you might play around in this adjust section here where you adjust the brightness, adjust the contrast, adjust the saturation, and you put some kind of tint. Sorry, not into the book cover. We don't want to do that. That's Control Z there. Okay, we'll just put it back that way. So make sure you have the right element selected, of course. But you can also, you can adjust the front cover as well. So if I wanted to make that brighter, or if I wanted to improve the contrast there, or bumping up the saturation is a good one sometimes, and it'll just make the red pop there and just make the cover stand out a bit more. But I think better results might be achieved in this particular example by using a 3D book cover. So I'm going to show you how to generate one of those for free. Now, you go back to that blog post that I mentioned at the start. Oops, slipped off the page there. Don't forget, I will put a link to this and anything else in the comments that I mentioned. And if you scroll down here, 3D cover creator is what I recommend here. So just click on that and you'll get taken to the site. Now, there's a bunch of 3D cover creators out there on the internet. Most of them are pretty terrible, to be quite honest with you. This one isn't perfect, but it's definitely the best that I've found. So looking at our image here, we need something to fit into this slot here. So the first thing that I think I would try is probably this kind of tilted iPad Kindle Fire type thing here. The bezel around the device can be a good way of separating the cover from the background. And also the tilt will add a little bit of depth and 3D to the image, which also always looks good, makes it pop a bit more, and just catches people's attention when they're scrolling down their busy Facebook feed or their BookBub emails. So let's try this one first of all. So you select the one you want there. You just click next, and then you upload your cover. So it's pretty easy to use. Where's the cover? Right there. I think that's it. And then you just click upload, and it just takes a second. And once that is loaded, click next. And then you scroll down here, and what you want is the PNG, because you want a transparent PNG, which is basically going to be a 3D version of this book cover with no background, which is what you want, so you can drop it into your image. So just click that, and it should download. Okay, there we go. And now I upload it into Canva. Sorry for all these pictures of me here. That's a bit weird. I was making YouTube thumbnails. I don't usually play around with pictures of myself all day. That's not usually how I like to spend my time. Okay, 1 second here. Let's get this uploaded. Right. Okay, it worked. Sweet. Okay, so let's ditch this 2D cover for the moment. We can always pull it back in if this is a disaster, which it might be because we're doing all this live. Okay, so here's the 3D version of the cover. Now let's just pull it into shape. Okay, I don't think that's so bad. I think, maybe I would adjust some of the background there so it's not quite as faded and muted, if you like, because it doesn't need to be now because we have this bezel around the device and we have the tilt on it. I like that image, with a bit more finessing of the button and the text and the background. I think that would be an image that works well on BookBub, reasonably well, as is. But I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so I think we can do better than that. So let's get rid of that. And let's go back to our 3D cover designer site and go back to the start and try one of these other options they have for us here, because I think something else might work better. Now, the reason why I got rid of this is because while the bezel does create a bit of distance between the cover and the background, it's also black, right? So that's just increasing the darkness in the overall image, which I don't want to do. So I'm going to try something else here. This is one of my go-tos. I like this 3D kind of hardback-ish cover. I think it stands out a bit. It catches the eye. It looks really neat and professional. And I don't think there's an issue, by the way. I've heard people wondering whether you should use images of paperbacks or hardbacks in your ads for ebooks. I don't think it matters at all. I have tested this and I haven't noticed any change in performance. In fact, I get better performance when I use this kind of image usually. So I don't think it's a factor. Now, let's go to next. And okay, it didn't. Sometimes I find the site a little bit fiddly, but as I said, it's by far the best one I've found. There we go. So once the image appears, you're safe to go to the final screen, and then you can download your transparent PNG and then upload it back into Canva, as I'll do now in a moment. Okay, great. Okay, so let's get rid of that guy. We don't need him anymore because we have our new hotness here, which is this one. Okay, great. All right. Now, I think this looks a lot more professional, but there's another problem here. And this is something that I see a lot of people doing with their ad images. Now, I don't know if this is something that I'm just OCD about, but I really hate when someone has a tilted cover on the wrong side of an ad image. Now, for me, that is kind of, how do I explain this? It's tilting away to the left there, where it's kind of like the eye is bouncing off it and leaving the ad image. That's what I feel like. I feel like it should be on the other side of the image. It just looks off to me. It just looks wrong. But that creates another problem for us, which I'll show you how to solve. So let's just move this guy out of the way. Let's get our free button over here. And this is where I naturally feel like the eye wants that book cover to be, right? Because it feels like just the composition just feels right with that ad image there, or with that book cover there, as opposed to on that side of the image and kind of deflecting people away from the image. Here, it feels like it keeps their attention on the image, kind of bounces off that and goes to the free, which is exactly what I want the eye to do, or else go to the free first and then look at the cover. That also works for me. And the problem is with the book cover over here, we are now covering up the most interesting parts of the background image and the rest is kind of pointless. So what do you do in this scenario? I think that is why, by the way, people usually have the book cover on the wrong side, because there are design elements that they desperately want to show. You want to show the scarf, you want to show the jail, you want to show the rosary beads and Bible. So here's a nice trick for you. Click the background on Canva, go to flip, and just go flip horizontal. And now you've just gotten all your design elements now over the side where you want them to be, and you're not really blocking anything once you move that out of the way. So the only thing you're blocking is that bed, which we were blocking the first time anyway, but I don't think you need that. The jail bars are enough for someone to get the impression of, you know, what you're doing there with the image anyway. Okay, so this is a pretty simple method that I think anybody can follow. You just take you just ask your cover designer to give you the art for your book without any lettering on it, and then get them to send it over to you, the highest res version they can, same with the cover. And then you can build all these things yourself. You can put it in a background, you can build these 3D covers. Like if I go back to this 3D cover site, there's actually all sorts of different things you can do here. In terms of, you know, if you want to do like a phone type version, if you want to do some kind of combo ones, there's a bunch of templates there that you can explore. I won't go through them all here. You can do that in your own time. What I do want to show you is some final bits of finessing to make this look pretty pro. So at the moment, we've got no filter on in the background. So I'm just going to fade that a little bit. And then I'm going to bump up the saturation on the cover so that red pops a little bit more, not too much. And then I'm just going to make that button a little bigger, because on BookBub, the actual size of this, just to show you the real size of your image, is going to be like that. And it's a good idea to always look at it, because that's pretty small. It's not like Facebook where it's, you know, taking up the whole or half the width of the screen and it's quite a large image size. On BookBub, it's the end of an email, which is already quite distracting for people, and it will be this size. So you got to make sure your image works in this size. So what I tend to find when I'm designing for something like that is that you want everything to be obnoxiously obvious. So let me just lock that into position so I can play with the button a bit more. Okay. So I would not be afraid of being kind of, you know, cheesy or obnoxiously obvious with your free button or your 99-cent price tag. I would just put it there as well. And then you'll see that when you look at it at 100% size, that's really going to pop, right? The red scarf is popping. It matches the red button. So I would think that that ad would perform very well when pointed at the right readers, even though that's something we've just knocked up here in about 10 minutes. So here's one last final trick for you. So this will really improve your kind of design workflow and just the amount of time that you're putting into all this stuff. Because I'm actually quite a lazy person. So I'm always looking for the most efficient design processes, the best kind of workflows, right? So, and this is something you can only do with Canva Pro, but for this feature alone, I'm happy to pay my tenner a month or whatever it is that it costs. So I take my BookBub image here and I go to resize. And I can resize this into anything I want. So if I'm doing like a header for my newsletter, if I'm doing something on YouTube, if I'm doing a Twitter card, if I'm doing a cover, like a Facebook cover for my Facebook page, that's the header image at the top of your Facebook page, or if I'm doing a Facebook ad, which is probably the most likely. So a lot of people are still doing these old letterbox size Facebook ads. Let's just copy and resize that. So you'll see here that hasn't done a great job of it because it's a pretty different kind of format, but we can actually finesse all this into place. And it's probably because I locked some of the elements down. But see, I would just put my book cover over here, and then I would detach that image from the background and just replace it in the right way. Probably something like that, and position it to the back. And then I would move my free button. Oh, sorry about that. Lock that cover down again. And then I would move my free button over somewhere where it just feels better for the eye, like here. I think that's going to catch people's attention. I usually like putting the price or the free buttons somewhere up here, but this is second best, and this works better with this image. So like, I think that ad would work really reasonably well on Facebook. But what actually works better on Facebook than this letterbox size now, which I think most authors are still doing, is the square image size. Now, Facebook has only rolled this out in the last few months, I think. So I think it was maybe this year, end of last year at the earliest, I think. But anyway, and the size you want is, because they're trying to make everything work on both Instagram and Facebook at the same time. So it's kind of that Instagram square shape. I think it's 1080 is the exact pixel size. And you'll see that is almost identical to my BookBub design because BookBub design is almost square. So it's very easy for me. I usually design it. I might design it first in Facebook size or first in BookBub size. It doesn't really matter. And then I just convert from one to the other. The only thing I might do on Facebook is I mightn't have the button as obnoxiously big because remember, this is your natural size of your BookBub ad, but your Facebook ad is actually this size. So you don't need something that big. Let me just make this smaller. You don't need something that big. So it can be that size on a desktop computer. It'd obviously be different on a mobile device, a phone or a tablet. But let's just put this back to something we can actually work with. Okay. So the only tweaks I would make here, I wouldn't necessarily need to fill that space with the book on Facebook because the canvas is that much bigger. I probably don't need this giant free button. So I would just tone that down a little bit. Maybe something like that. Now, you might be concerned about the amount of text in this image because, again, this is something that Facebook have changed. And actually, this change only happened in the last few weeks. Facebook have removed the rule against text. So it used to be an issue with Facebook ads where Facebook's system would read the text on a cover and then it would see more text here on the button. And then it might throttle the ad and that can cause a spike in your click costs, which I think is another reason why people often didn't like to use book covers in ads. Now, book covers always had an exemption. Any text on a product in a Facebook ad image always had an exemption. But sometimes the robots and reviewers didn't quite get that. And it could cause a few issues. Now you can go wild with text. There's no limit on text whatsoever anymore in Facebook ad images. They won't throttle your ad. The only thing they'll throttle it for is the same thing they throttle any ad for, which is, if it's really poor user experience or nobody's clicking on it and all that stuff. So don't worry about text anymore in your Facebook ad images. But I wouldn't cover them in text either because I don't think that performs best. I would use just a small bit of text and make sure it's impactful. Because if you put in, a review quote here, and then, another, a quote from a fellow author here, and then something about your offer here, and then your website address here, you're just diffusing the attention. Now, if I was running this campaign for Ernie, or if Ernie was running this campaign for himself, and he has this book of free, his main primary goal here is to get as many of these free books into his target readership's hands. And your ad should focus on that goal. So free, book, background. I don't think you need, I think any more than that is gilding the lily. You're taking attention away from what you want people to be focused on, which is the cover and the offer. And that's it. So keep them simple, but just don't be worried now if you're putting in a little bit of text. Maybe you have a really juicy quote from a fellow author that will really help shift books. Okay, stick it in. But I just keep the prominence on the offer and keep the prominence on the cover. You can put a subtle bit of text maybe here at the top, for example, in this ad image. And I just wouldn't, bump it up and use contrast to catch the eye and all that stuff. I would just have it subtly there for anyone that's looking at the image a bit longer. But in general, just keep it simple. Keep it focused on your offer and focused on your book cover. And use the cover art in the background, but don't let it dominate the ad. And hope that, a few of the tricks here I showed you in this video will help you handle things like tricky covers like this, which are a little bit dark or have a lot of design elements going on. Whew. These live design challenges are pretty nerve-wracking, I have to say. But I hope you got a lot out of that video, or at least a few tips that will work for you when you're dealing with tricky things like dark covers or ornate covers or ones that just don't lend themselves to a very simple and obvious design. I hope you found out a few new features from Canva and a few tools that you can use as well. Don't forget to check the description. I will have links to everything that I use there. It's all free and a bunch more resources for you that you can enjoy too. Don't forget to hit that subscription button and that notification bell. That really helps the channel. Thanks a lot, guys.